Hello. I would like us to talk about substance abuse among teens and in young adults. The most important thing is to understand here is that with substance abuse, the parts of our body system that is affected by substance abuse is the brain. And we think about this, we think about the brain as a complex organ in our system and in human nature. Remembering that we do not have a spare brain, we cannot have a substitute to replace a brain after any damage. So it's very important that we discuss about substance abuse amongst our children, amongst the youth and teens before we get to a point whereby the brain is damaged and there is no return back to that. Otherwise, when we talk about substance abuse, I would like us to understand that the most commonly drugs or substances to be abused, we have cocaine, heroin, marijuana, methamphetamines, inhalants, and anabolic steroids. So we need to understand that 81% of young adults are using drugs of one type or the other. In most cases, the commonly used drug is marijuana. And when we talk about it, we talk about weed in general. And it is used by a lot of adolescents and young adults for reasons that we need to think about so that if we can prevent usage, we'll be in a better place to save their future. Otherwise, when we talk about substance abuse, I want us to think about the two things that can affect the brain. With substance abuse, we can have a problem with brain development. Thinking about brain development, it happens mostly during the teenage year. That's the most crucial time of brain development of a young adults. And at this point, we need to understand that between the ages of 11 and 12, there is much of a lot of things that has happened before the adolescent year. And as time comes to 11 and 12, the brain development have some connections, which at one point in 11 and 12 years, there is some kind of firing of unused connections in the brain. So at this point, there are some connections that are pruned back, and those connections, they are done like that so that at least they can foster the efficient connection or information processing in the brain of a young adult. So for that reason, when this is happening and substance abuse is introduced in the brain of these kids, there can be some effects on brain development. So you can see some changes in them, and it is something that we need to be cautious and talk to them about the usage of these things at this specific age to avoid some delays, to avoid some issues in brain development, which probably we can recognize later if we don't recognize the usage at this time, which is very crucial. The other thing that I will not say that it influences memory loss, but at one point it can be a risk. Substance use can be a risk to memory loss because sometimes with the use of these substances, they can cause some damage to the brain, which will bring some issues and bring loss of concentration in young adults. With that being said, there can be some issues in memory later in life. So very crucial to know those two things can be caused by substance abuse. When we talk about all this, there is something that is very important to know. The risk factors of why young adults are using substances. So the first thing that we can talk about and which we think is the most common one is peer pressure. When we talk about peer pressure, we just need to know that the kids in this generation, teens and young adults, they're looking for identity roles, and with this kind of a problem, they want to fit in the groups they move around or hang around with. So if a friend is using drugs or using substance stuff, whichever one they are using, they may try it to introduce it to their peer. And if these peers are not strong enough and they do not know their stand, or they are easily influenced by what is going on around their environment, they are an easy target when things are introduced to them. There are those who can never say no because they want to fit in. And some of them, they go to that kind of issue if there is some bullying involved in something, which I'm very much against bullying up to this time. And I like to talk and to stand when this thing is noted somewhere. So with peer pressure, kids can get into substance abuse just to fit in and move with the gang or the peer that they are moving around with. So we need to be careful and open our eyes on the peers they move around with and their behaviors. The other thing is stress. When you talk about stress, everybody is going through stress. And at times we figure out, like, to cope with stress, people use a lot of coping mechanism. Young adults and teenagers, they take substance use as a coping mechanism. For whatever reason, either it gives them a loss of what they are going through and they kind of forget about issues. But I always tell them, guess what? It is like removing shoes when you're going to bed. When you get up in the morning, you put your shoes back on and you move on with life. So it will be a day change, but you don't keep your stress down. You just forget it for a short time and then you wake up again and you move up with it. So the best thing is looking for a solution of the stressful thing that you're going through. So when you talk about stress, here we are talking about physical stress, we are talking about emotional and mental stress. Let's check on them and see what kind of stress they might be going through so that they can be helped in any way. The other stressors that can come along with young adults and adolescents is conflicts with loved ones, death of loved ones, illness, legal problems. Remember, these young adults, they're getting to adulthood at 18, whereby they get to legal issues if they don't move into the world in a very careful manner. Remembering at this age, if they have messed up somewhere in life and they meet the law at 18, the law is not going to forgive. So it's good we continue talking about the legal things that can get young adults in trouble after they get to 18, shaping their lives the best we can before age 18 so that they can get into the system knowing what is awaiting for them, and they move with it with confidence on their personal characteristics being shaped so that they can get out of danger at any time. So depression and anxiety is another thing that can cause use of substance abuse as a coping mechanism. So with this being said, you can tell that kids sometimes they are unable to get to social gatherings because of either fear or they have some phobias. And for them to cope with such kind of things, they get to substance abuse so that they can stand strong, which they'll be standing under influence of something in their system. So let's just watch on depression, anxiety, and stress among the young adults and help them if possible. Another thing can be child trauma, which is caused by childhood experiences. It's a topic which is very wide about ACE. It is advanced childhood experiences that kids go through, which can be either physical abuse or traumatic experiences that they have gone through, and they kind of come out during adolescence, because during childhood they might not be in a position to talk much about how or what they've been going through. Either there was some kind of sexual abuse that the kids went through. There can be kind of trauma that the kids went through. And with that being said, you can tell these kids have been holding on to a lot of things. And with that being said, you'll see them exposing or trying now to come out with a lot of issues that they can be in a position to be in problems with. Another thing that can cause that kind of trauma is experiences like emotional, verbal abuse, natural disasters, and they can be helped by either counseling if something like that is going on with them, instead of looking for coping mechanisms to kind of cover up whatever they are going through. The fourth issue here, which is very important, especially with us parents to check on, is the family circumstances, which can lead our children or the young adults and teenagers into drug or substance use. When we have issues like divorce in the families, the kids are affected and they can go to substance abuse looking for some coping mechanism because there are things that they cannot control. Mostly they'll use what they can control, and that's why they're controlled by drugs, because the system, the family issues, those are the things which are over them to control, and they can use substances to kind of cope with the mechanism that they're going through. So divorce of parents can make the adolescents start abusing drugs. The other thing is when one of the parents or both parents are abusing drugs. So it is more likely that the children will once somewhere get to substance abuse, and may lead to the usage in a very heavy way because they have seen it being done. They were not talked about it, and anyway, whoever was doing it was the person who was supposed to talk against it and never did. So unemployment is another issue that can lead to, which is a family experience. When the young adults, they're looking for jobs and they're not available, they get too much free time and they can get into issues of substance use. So with that being said, those few issues are things that we need to check on our young adults as they grow, and if anything, we can be able to help them out and see the way forward so that they don't get to issues of brain issues later in life. Otherwise, thank you. Looking for more videos, and God bless you.